Hey there, welcome to the Bible in 1 Year with Ochidoayi, and I'm your host, Ochidoayi. I have attempted to do the Bible in 1 year before. This is my fourth attempt, and I have chosen to do this every single time I attempted it, something went wrong. So I have done it once, completed it once. This will be my second attempt. And so, in order to keep me accountable, I have decided to share my journey with an audience online. I hope that you draw the lessons that I am drawing, and I'll be interpreting my understanding. The aim of wanting to read the Bible in 1 year is so that I can know God for myself and encourage anyone out there who wants to know a bit about God to take up the challenge and read for themselves what God is really about. We have been doing this, and this is the 7th week. Today is day 43, and I'll be telling you about my readings for today. Every single time I do the Bible, I read using this, the Bible, the daily Bible reading guide with Pastors Ina and Sarah Marco, the lead pastors of Family Worship Center. Every day we look at an Old Testament scripture, a New Testament scripture, a little bit of Psalms, and a little bit of Proverbs. So today we are looking at Exodus 34. If you've been following me in any way, you will know that now Moses has broken the 10 commandments and has gotten into a lot of trouble. He got really angry, and he has been summoned back up to retake the 10 commandments. So we're reading, our Old Testament reading will be from Exodus 34, 1 to 35. So basically, I have taken down my notes here, and I'm going to try and take down my notes. So the Lord said to Moses, "Chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first one, and I will write on them again the words that were on the first tablet, which you broke. Be ready in the morning, then come up to Mount Sinai. Present yourself to me there on top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere on the mountain. Not even the flocks and herds may graze in front of the mountain." So basically, Moses goes back up and he does a 40 and 40. And by 40 and 40, I mean 40 days and 40 nights. I mean, that was just what he spent there. And, and the Israelites broke. They built the golden calf and broke everything. So today, let me just quickly go through. Moses went back up again after God summoned him and spent another 40 and 40 with God. God reminded him what his laws were again, and God was going to have them written for the Israelites. He told Moses that he was going to make sure they were in awe of who he was. Like, maybe he was like, these guys don't really know who I am. I'm going to show them who I am. I'm going to make sure they never forget who they're dealing with. I am the God. So I marked something out here in my Bible. I'm reading from the New International Version today. I marked something out here. It seems like anytime God showed up and met with Moses, he always hailed himself. So let me read out what he said here, what he says here. The Lord, maybe that's like Yahweh or something. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love for thousands, and forgiving wickedness and rebellion and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th generation. If you recall, I commented on that punishing them, saying that God is so powerful. I feel like it's a reverberation of the sins of the father. The punishment reverberates through all the way to the 4th generation. Okay, so that's God hailing himself. Like every time he shows up, he reminds them who he is. So I think that every one of us should have some sort of creed like that, something that makes you remember. You know how some friends are popular and then they remind you, when that friend comes around, he starts to say, I am the this, I am the that. I think that's who God, we learned that from God. So I took time to list out some of the things that he reminded them, what his laws were again. Number 1 here, he says he reminds them, he strikes up the covenant with Moses, promising to drive out the 6 nations. Let me try and read the nations: the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. 6 nations out. Number 2, he says, don't worship any other God. Like, I'm really big on this one. Like, can you guys not try me with this other God business? Don't worship any other God. Don't treaty with them. Don't make any treaties with them. Okay? Do not, if once you move into the land, make sure you destroy anything that you met there. Don't try to accommodate. Don't be greedy. Don't cover. Don't take anything. Don't accommodate it. Destroy it completely. Anything you met there when you arrived, don't intermarry with them. The reason is simple. They will lure you away from what I'm trying to teach you. You are still too fresh in this business for you to think you are strong enough to handle intermarriage with them. Do not cast idols. Do not build. Do not sculpt. Do not cast in iron. In no form should you do anything that looks like an idol amongst you. Do not come empty-handed whenever it is you come to me. So I'm going to be visiting with you guys. Do not come to me empty-handed. Anytime the Passover comes around, you must have 7 days in a year where you have bread with no yeast. You know, no yeast. So if you remember when the Passover took place, they were asked not to eat bread with yeast. You must have 7 days off with no yeast. Every firstborn, every first offspring of anyone belongs to God. And every first male belongs to God. So you must redeem every first man. By redeeming means maybe like I don't know what redeem might have been exactly at that time, but maybe like give money in exchange for the firstborn son, or the firstborn anything, daughter, firstborn animal. If you're not going to redeem the animal, you break its neck. Redeem, it belongs to God. Sabbath, God was really, I think the Israelites were still struggling to learn how to rest. They are used to being slaves. They have been slaves for 400 years, or maybe a little less than that, because they didn't really become slaves immediately they went to Egypt. It had to be after Joseph had died and a new Pharaoh came that they didn't know who Joseph was. So do not, you must rest every seventh day. Every seventh day. Celebrate the Feast of Weeks with first fruits. The issue of first fruits is quite controversial in many climes, especially in my home country, Nigeria. Many of the clergy are perceived to be extremely conscious about financial blessings. So whenever the issue of tithe are mentioned, the issue of first fruits are mentioned, people are agitated. So I too have some concerns, which I would probably share as I am showing up as well. So every first fruit should be given annually, as well as the feast on ingathering. Celebrate Feast of Weeks. Celebrate Feast of Weeks with first fruit, yes. Do not offer blood sacrifices with yeast. God is still big on that no yeast thing. I wonder what that yeast thing means. I wonder why God is so big on not having yeast in food, at least for the Passover period. Every Passover food must not be left over to the next morning. Whenever Passover takes place, you must make sure it is consumed before the next day. Bring the best of your first fruits off the soil. Here it specifically says of the soil and not of the animals. I'm not sure why, but I took note of that. To the house of the Lord. Do not cook a goat in its mom's milk. Maybe they used to eat it back in the day. And then, of course, Moses got all these reminders at the 40 days and 40 nights, second time he had to stay with God and receive the instructions. So God kind of like reminds them again of the Sabbath law and requests that they bring to him willingly all the goats. So if you remember when they were leaving the Israelites, the Egyptians, they were giving a lot of gifts: gold, silver, articles, ornaments, all sorts of things. So now God is finally requesting for them, bring in the gold, the silver. I took time to list them here: the blue, purple, and scarlet fabrics, the fine linen, goat's hair, ram's skin, olive oil, spices, acacia wood, spices for oil and perfumes, stones for their outfits, And then why? Because even though the Israelites were distracted with building the calf and wanting to start another whole religion, God was still focused on the goal. So once everything had calmed down, he told Moses, we are back to the plan. We're going back to the goal. Ask them to start bringing all of these things and let them be willing to do it. So that's our reading for today from the Old Testament. The New Testament, we are still going over the issue of Jesus. Matthew 27, verses 15 to verse 34. After Jesus had been convicted by the Jews, the clergy of the Jews, they sought and bagged his political conviction as well from Pontius Pilate, who was the governor at the time. Pontius was reluctant to condemn him because he, number one, knew that they just envied him and they were just picking a fight with him, all this religious jargon. I don't think that he was a very religious man. And number two, his wife had warned him to avoid their drama, So he openly asked them to choose between a known murderer and Jesus, whom he felt, come on, when you look at that murderer guy and Jesus, you will just let Jesus go. He's actually innocent. But they chose Jesus. They chose Jesus. So he decided to wash his hands in front of them. Look, I'm free of these things. Let this be your decision. And they're like, let it be on our heads and that of our children. Like, who does that? Who carries on problems and then says, look, we take on the problem and we pass the problem on to our children? Okay, I don't want to spend so much time today. Okay, so who does that? So the soldiers flogged Jesus, they mocked him, they jeered him, they took off his outfit, they wore some sort of robe for him, they were clowning around him, teasing him, and when they had beaten him thoroughly, then they decided, okay, we're tired of playing, let's go and do the crucifixion and let's get moving. When they got to they called a guy named Simon who was reluctant, but he was asked to carry the cross. He carried the cross. And they offered wine, and Jesus refused the wine. And so that's where we stopped there. A mob, one thing that stuck out to me was a mob joined to condemn Jesus, even though they didn't really know what the Pharisees were accusing him of. They had all these false witnesses saying things, and people were just there like, look, one of the things I'm learning is I'm never part of the mob. I'm never part of any mob in any social media mob, not me. Mob when they're criticizing the government, not me. Nothing. Don't be part of any mob, because mobs do not usually make the best decisions. Mobs do not usually make the best decisions. Okay, so let's quickly, that's our reading for today. The Old and the New Testament. So the book of Psalms, I'm just going to read it very quickly. It's 10 verses, Psalm 33, verses 12 to 22. 12 to 22. Basically, this psalm says, blessed is the nation whose God is Yahweh, the people he has chosen as an inheritance. That means that there are nations whose God is not Yahweh, whose God is not Jehovah, whose God is not the God that we know today. There are nations who don't serve that God. So when a nation has that as their God, they're kind of like a lucky bunch. Now I think about my country, Nigeria, and I like to believe that Nigeria belongs to God. But I know that there are many contrary voices to that. Many people do not believe that Nigeria belongs to God. And in some climes I've seen on Quora and some places, there are people who actually believe Nigeria to be an Islamic country. When I first saw that, I was really surprised. Like, where did they get that idea from? But I believe that Nigeria belongs to God, and Nigeria is a blessed nation for doing that. So God watches all mankind. His eyes see those who fear him. This is a summary. No king is really saved by the size of his army. No warrior really by his strength. It is really God that saves. No horse can give anyone deliverance when there's a real war. Ultimately, it's God who watches. So when God is on your side, you are better off. That's what the psalm says. It is God who delivers from death and famine. He will wait. So we will wait in hope for the Lord, for he is our help and our shield, and we will trust in him. Our book of Proverbs is just 6 verses. It's talking about wisdom. Let me see. Let me just read this. Wisdom has built her house, and she has hewn out its 7 pillars. She has prepared her meat and mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her maids. She calls from the highest point in the city. Let all who are simple, who don't think deeply, who are not very deep critical thinkers, who may not be very intelligent, who may not be very wise, who don't process information deeply, come around, who are ignorant, really. Come around, come and eat my food. Those of you who lack good judgment, and drink the wine that I have mixed. Live your simple ways and you will live. Walk in the ways of understanding. So I wrote here that wisdom has been likened to a lady who has prepared a lavish meal in a house built with 7 pillars, where she has set a table with meat and wine, inviting all unwise people to come and dine with her. I want to encourage us. I am going to take her up on her offer. Every single day, I ask for wisdom to be my big sister, my mom, my brother. Be wisdom. With wisdom, there are many things that you'll be able to do in world. So I hope you have enjoyed my scripture reading for today, and I'll see you tomorrow.